Hope you're all still awake. Late Night Mega here. And sometimes I get asked, don't you ever get tired of replaying these Mega Man games over and over? And the answer is no, I find it electrifying. So with that, we'll go to Elecman, who has probably my favorite stage theme in the game. Yeah. Elecman's stage is very lengthy, and it's very upward climby. Yeah, I just made that up. But it's very much a vertical level. You'll see lots of ladders, lots of climbing upwards, and lots of tricky places along the way. Now I remember years ago, no, it wasn't Legacy Collection. This is Legacy Collection. I should look that up offhand. But on the collection for the GameCube, I remember doing a challenge for myself to beat all of the Robot Masters with no E-Tanks and no special weapons. Elecman was one of the two most difficult to complete that task with. The other one being Iceman. Yeah, go figure. The two Robot Masters from the first Mega Man game are two of the toughest out of all of them to do that with. With their weakness weapons, they go down very quickly. I'll get into that in a bit. But let me put things this way. By the time that I beat Elecman with no special weapons, there's no E-Tanks in the original Mega Man game. That's also makes this one of the more difficult Mega Man entries of all time. Yeah, the first one is one of the most difficult. That still holds true today. And I'm talking about other Mega Man series as well. If you want to throw in the X series, the X series, this one is still pretty difficult. I wouldn't call it the most difficult anymore, but I would call it the most difficult of the classic series. Anyways, by the time I was able to beat Elecman with the Buster only and figure out a good way to do so, I could get through this stage without getting hit. And now I would use special weapons to get through the stage in some points. So here we kind of have a choice where we could go up the left path or up the right path. This is a neat idea. Another neat and revolutionary idea at the time was the idea that you could play this game picking stages in whatever order you wanted to. So if you find a stage that you find you're having... I tried to pause earlier there. I don't think I could because I had a Buster shot on the screen. Another flaw with the earlier first three Mega Man games. Here's why you want to go to Gutsman before coming to Elecman. Otherwise you have to come back here to get this. This is the Magnet Beam. It will create temporary platforms that we can walk or jump on. It can help us in certain scenarios, and it's actually required to beat the game. And I didn't really feel like having to come back here, so that's why I like going to Gutsman before Elecman. Elecman's weapon could also break those blocks, but again, you'd be going to Elecman and then coming back to the stage to get the thing. If you don't have Gutsman's weapon and you went up the right side, well, tough luck, you get to come all the way back down. Yeah, that's not fun. Those electric beams is just a timing thing. You want to get as close as you can without getting hit to them. Close as you can without getting hit to them. Without getting hit by them on the ladder, and then when they're gone, immediately start climbing up. That way you have enough time to avoid them. That's Big Eye. It's kind of annoying. And I already caused a glitch. Of course I did. A glitch where the fire was still persisting, even though it shouldn't have been. And so here we're going to use that trick a lot. Do not try to rush it. Just take them one at a time. We have 2 rounds of this. Now, the trick for battling Elecman here is to be facing in the correct direction. That usually helps. But if you stay on the ground with him, you can usually get him to just... Problem is he'll take a run, but he'll hop over you like that. And that's what you want him to do. You don't want him to throw that thunder beam and get hit by that, because if you do that, that thunder beam, I believe, kills you in 2 shots if you have full health. That is how much ridiculous damage that this does, and that's why Elecman and Iceman are some of the more difficult Robot Masters to beat Buster only. But we're going to beat Elecman Buster only, not going to beat Iceman Buster only in this playthrough. But just take my word for it, it's possible, it's difficult. Because his ice, again, Iceman's Ice Slasher attack will kill you in 3 or 4 hits. I believe it's 3. Now, you might think that, okay, maybe you want to try and be on that upper ledge there and attack Elecman as he jumps up. The problem with that is, it's really difficult to jump over that thunder beam. And mistiming it even slightly results in you being 2-hit killed. Now, if you get Elecman to jump up there... Oh, why am I having a lot of... Sometimes they get knocked back. You know, Robot Masters in future games don't get knocked back by our Buster. That only happens in this one. Lots of weird mechanics that I just don't really like about the original Mega Man game, but they get patched up as time goes on. If you can get Elecman in that upper ledge, you can stay below him and then jump and shoot, and you can avoid his attacks really nicely. And that's how you can get a lot of damage on him while being pretty safe. Elecman also has one of the best weapons in the game. Some people will say it is the best weapon. I would disagree with that. I do have some issues with the Thunder Wave weapon you get. Don't get me wrong, it is really nice, as you'll see. But you'll also see that I have some issues with it as well. Now, let's focus on getting the weapon first. And we did get him trapped up above, and that helped us out there. Yeah, fairly tricky. Alright, so up next, we are actually going to put the weakness order into practice here. We're going to go to Iceman, who happens to be weak to Elecman's weapon. Electricity beats ice in this game, and not fire. Go figure. Those enemies, those walking robots, they actually have 2 halves. If you hit their top half, the whole thing will be destroyed. If you destroy their lower half, I believe it takes a couple shots, then the top half will come off and start flying at you and flying all around. It's not a good time. And while we have these flying penguins here, I don't know who came up with this stuff. Let's use our new Thunder Wave. Thunder Wave, that's a Pokemon attack. We're not following the Pokemon type chart in this game. Not when ice beats fire. So the issue I have with the Thunder Beam there is that sometimes it can curve around enemies, and you'll end up missing an enemy, and it can be kind of annoying. You'll actually see that happen a couple times in this playthrough. So that's why I don't like using it on those ground crawler enemies. I like the consistency of the Firestorm, which will fire a straight shot, and you'll always hit the thing when it's on the ground. Whereas if you use the Thunder Beam, it could just curve around it. Now, Gutsman's weapon is kind of tricky to use. The general idea with this game is to get some of the weapons to help you against some of the other stages or some of the other bosses. Our magnet beam is why you would want to... That was rude. It's why you would want to go to Electman stage before Iceman stage. Because the magnet beam can really help you out in that section. Yeah, and that was a demonstration there. I intentionally shot the guy's legs out from under him, just to show what he would do. For these enemies, I like to try and just dodge around and not necessarily destroy everything. Ooh, 1-up. I will take that. Give me that 1-up. I think you can make that full jump, but it's kind of tricky. So I always try to plan myself going in the middle. Those little ground crawlers, gabules, what they're called. I don't really need the health. Those enemies, though, they're called Susies. I don't know who came up with this, but that's what they're called. And they take like 5 or 6 hits from the Mega Buster to kill. But they only take 1 hit from either the electricity or the fire. So use whichever one you prefer. Now, a cool thing about the Thunder Beam, you'll notice that it also shoots out a Thunder Beam going up and downwards. So that can help you hit enemies that are vertically positioned differently than you. And these disappearing blocks, the infamous disappearing blocks. We saw them in Electman stage briefly, and they make an appearance again in Iceman stage, and it's not going to be the final appearance of them in the game either. And that was a glitch. So that's another issue with those footholder platforms, is sometimes, even though you should be landing on it, you'll kind of glitch through the platform and take a hit, because if you run into those footholders on their face, you'll actually take a hit and get knocked off. This is a spot where speedrunning this game can kind of come to a halt or be ruined if you have to deal with those footholders. We're going to start using the magnet beam to get around that. There is a reason I didn't want to necessarily use the magnet beam. Our energy will get restored after each stage or game over, so I wasn't worried about that. But we will have some penguins flying at us soon. And you can't shoot the penguins with a magnet beam. You don't forget this. We're just gonna do this, get on this platform. And these also go in kind of a random... see, took a hit there. Kind of a random direction. So if you were waiting on footholders, you might be waiting a while until it goes up high enough for you to actually jump on the platform. I was trying to get that life there, didn't work out. Alright, and we have another Big Eye enemy. They appear at almost the end of every stage in this game. Well, not the Dr. Wily stages, but the main stages. Now, I would like to actually go to Iceman a little bit earlier, although it's not completely feasible in this order, but Iceman's weapon can actually freeze. Look at that, he dodged. Can't dodge to that. Yeah, 3 shots, and Iceman's done. To get the Ice Slasher, but I really need the other weapons in order to get through Iceman safely. So, alright, well, with that, I will see you guys next time for the last 2 Robot Masters.